On Sunday, October 15th, 2023, my son stood in my garden and said, "Mom, I sold your house. You have 48 hours to pack your things." I'm Beatrice Crane, 64 years old, and I've lived at 247 Maple Street for 45 years. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply smiled and said, "Is that so?" What my son didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that the house wasn't actually in my name anymore, and that single fact was about to change everything. Let me tell you how a mother loses her son and how she finds herself. That October afternoon started like any other Sunday. I was in my garden, deadheading the last roses of the season, deep burgundy blooms my grandmother used to call freedom roses because they reminded her of the soil back in Mississippi, where her people had worked land they could never own. My knees were in the dirt, my hands busy with the pruning shears Jerome had given me on our 20th anniversary, when I heard the car door slam. I looked up to see my son Terrence climbing out of his silver Audi A6, a car I'd always thought was too expensive for a man still paying student loans. But that was Terrence, always reaching for more than he had. What struck me immediately was that he'd come alone. No Ashley, his wife of 10 years. On Sundays, they usually came together, stayed for an hour, made polite conversation over sweet tea on the porch. But today, Terrence walked toward me with his shoulders set and his jaw tight, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Mom," he said, not even waiting for me to stand. "We need to talk." He didn't help me up, didn't ask about my knees, which he knew gave me trouble when I knelt too long. He just stood there in his pressed khakis and polo shirt, hands in his pockets, looking at me like I was a problem he needed to solve. I rose slowly, brushing soil from my gardening gloves. "All right, baby, I sold your house." The words came out flat, rehearsed, like he'd practiced them in the car on the way over. My pruning shears fell into the rose bush. "You what?" "The sale closes in 2 days, Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. The new owners want to move in by the weekend, so you'll need to pack quickly. I've already arranged a moving company. They'll be here Wednesday at 2 p.m. I stared at my son, my only child, the boy I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through colic, driven to soccer practice every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 years, and I didn't recognize him. "Terrence," I said slowly, "this is my house." "Was your house, Mom? Look, Ashley and we've been planning this trip. Our 10th anniversary, the Maldives. We've had the resort booked for 8 months," and he stopped, running his hand over his face. "We need the money, the equity, you understand." "No," I said quietly. "I don't understand how you think you can sell my house without my permission." He laughed, actually laughed. "Mom, come on. You can't maintain this place anymore. It's too much for one person. The property taxes alone are what, $6,000 a year? The heating bills? You're living on a teacher's pension. Be realistic." That word, realistic. As if my 33 years teaching American history at Roosevelt High School, my paid-off mortgage, my carefully managed retirement accounts were somehow naive. Unrealistic. "I've arranged a very nice assisted living facility," Terrence continued, pulling a brochure from his back pocket. "Sunset Gardens. 1 bedroom, all utilities included. They have activities, a nurse on staff 24 hours. You'll be safer there, Mom. This house is just too much." I took the brochure. On the cover, elderly white people played cards at a table, their smiles fixed and glassy. Inside, starting at $3,200 per month. "You want me to pay $38,000 a year to live in 1 room, I said. "It's for your own good. And the house money?" Terrence shifted his weight. "Ashley and I have been under a lot of financial pressure. The trip is non-refundable, $52,000. We already paid. And there are other expenses, Mom. You wouldn't understand. The point is, this works out for everyone. You get a safe place to live, we get the equity we need, and—" "Get off my property." The words came out so quiet, Terrence actually leaned forward. "What?" I said, "Get off my property. Now." "Mom, don't be dramatic. Terrence Eugene Crane." I used his full name, the one I'd given him after my father and Jerome's grandfather. "You come to my home, the home your father and I bought in 1986 with money we saved for 15 years. You tell me you've sold it without my knowledge or consent. You tell me to pack my life into boxes in 48 hours, and you have the nerve to call me dramatic?" Something flickered across his face, Shame maybe, or anger. I couldn't tell anymore. Fine, he said. But Mom, this is happening. The papers are signed. The buyers have put down earnest money. You can make this easy or you can make it hard, but either way you need to be out by Friday. He turned and walked back to his Audi. I watched him drive away, standing in my garden with dirt on my knees and my heart hammering against my ribs. Then I went inside, washed my hands at the kitchen sink, the same sink where Jerome used to wash vegetables for Sunday dinner, where we'd given Terrence his first bath in a plastic tub, and I started making phone calls. Because here's what Terrence didn't know. Jerome Crane wasn't just my husband. He was an attorney. A civil rights attorney who'd spent 40 years protecting Black families from predatory lending, fraudulent foreclosures, and exploitation. And before he died on March 3, 2018, from a heart attack that came too sudden and too soon, he'd made absolutely certain that no one, not even our own son, could take this house from me. The first call I made was to the county clerk's office. A woman named Patricia answered, her voice efficient and slightly bored. Middlesex County Records, how can I help you? Yes, ma'am, my name is Beatrice Crane. I need to verify the ownership status of 247 Maple Street. One moment, I heard typing. Okay, I see it. The property is held in a living trust. The Crane Family Trust, established November 12, 2017. You're listed as the primary trustee. My heart, which had been racing since Terrence left, steadied. And for someone to sell property held in that trust? The trustee would need to sign all documentation. That would be you, Mrs. Crane. Without your signature, no sale can proceed. Thank you, I said. Thank you very much. I hung up and sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where Jerome and I had signed the trust documents 4 years ago, where he'd looked at me with those serious eyes and said, Baby, I've seen too many widows lose everything because they didn't protect themselves. This house is in the trust now. You're in control. Not our names on a deed. Not joint ownership. You, only you. At the time, I'd thought he was being overly cautious. Now I understood he'd been protecting me from exactly this. So the question was, what had Terrence actually done? Had he forged documents, lied to buyers? Or was this all an elaborate bluff to scare me into signing the house over? I needed to know, and I needed evidence. I opened my laptop. Yes, I own a laptop, despite what my son seems to think about women my age, and navigated to Facebook. Terrence rarely posted, but Ashley? Ashley documented everything. Her profile loaded, and I scrolled back through the last 8 months. There, dated February 14th, booking our dream anniversary trip, Maldives, here we come. Hashtag bucket list, hashtag luxury travel, hashtag 10 years strong. March 3rd, counting down the days, 234 days until paradise. May 18th, resort package paid in full. This is really happening. Hashtag dreams do come true, hashtag Maldives bound. June 22nd, custom couples massage, private dinner on the beach, snorkeling with manta rays. I literally cannot wait. Hashtag spoiled wife. I kept scrolling. Every few weeks, another post about the trip, photos of the resort from their website, screenshots of itineraries, countdown posts. Then I noticed something else. Between the vacation posts were others, designer handbags, new furniture, a kitchen renovation they'd done in July, a photograph of Ashley wearing a Cartier love bracelet, $7,850 according to the Cartier website, which I looked up. These were not people who could afford a $52,000 vacation. I opened a new tab and searched for Terrence's employer, Prestige Financial Advisors, Boston. The firm's website showed a team of 12 advisors. Terrence's photo was there, smiling and confident. Terrence Crane, CFP, Senior Financial Consultant. I clicked on the news section. The most recent article, dated September 28th, made my stomach drop. Prestige Financial Advisors under investigation for client fund irregularities. The article was vague. Something about the Minnesota Securities Division conducting a routine audit, questions about certain accounts, an ongoing investigation. But it mentioned that several advisors were being reviewed. Was Terrence one of them? I needed more information. I needed someone who could tell me the truth. I picked up my phone and called Robert Martinez. Robert and Terrence had been colleagues for 6 years. I'd met him at the company Christmas party in 2021, and we'd talked for 20 minutes about his daughter's college search. He'd seemed kind, honest. He answered on the third ring. Hello? Robert, this is Beatrice Crane, Terrence's mother. We met at— Mrs. Crane, of course. How are you? I need to ask you something, Robert, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Is Terrence in trouble at work? The pause that followed told me everything. Mrs. Crane, I probably shouldn't— Please. Another pause. Then, he took a loan against his 401k last month, $60,000. And there's talk. Some people think there might be irregularities with his client accounts. Nothing proven, but the audit— He trailed off. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate your honesty. I hung up and sat very still. $60,000 from his retirement, $52,000 for the vacation, and possibly irregularities with client funds, which in Jerome's world had meant one thing: theft. My son wasn't just in debt. He might be committing crimes to cover it up, and he thought he could solve it all by selling my house. I looked around my kitchen. The cabinets Jerome and I had refinished ourselves in 1994. The window over the sink where I'd watched Terrence play in the backyard, where I'd stood crying when Jerome died, where I'd drunk my coffee every morning for 45 years. This house wasn't just property. It was my grandparents escaping sharecropping in Mississippi. It was my parents working 3 jobs to rent an apartment in Boston so I could go to a better school. It was Jerome and me saving every extra penny for 15 years to make the down payment. It was the first home anyone in my family had ever owned, and Terrence thought he could take it for a vacation. I picked up my phone one more time and dialed a number I'd saved 5 years ago, right after Jerome's funeral. Dorothy Williams answered on the second ring. Beatrice, is everything all right? Dorothy had been Jerome's classmate at Suffolk University Law School, class of 1979. She'd built her career defending black families against predatory lending and financial exploitation. She'd given the eulogy at Jerome's funeral, standing at the pulpit of First Baptist Church and saying, Jerome Crane spent his life making sure people like us could keep what we'd earned, that our homes, our land, our legacy couldn't be stolen by those who thought we didn't deserve them. Now I needed her to do the same for me. Dorothy, I said, my son just tried to steal my house. Dorothy Williams arrived at my front door at 9 o'clock the next morning, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a charcoal suit that meant business. She was 61, with silver-streaked hair she wore in a short natural, and eyes that had seen every kind of family betrayal there was. Show me everything, she said. We sat at my kitchen table, and I walked her through it. Terrence's announcement, the timeline, the Facebook posts, the news article about Prestige Financial, my call to the county clerk confirming the trust. Dorothy took notes in a leather journal, her handwriting sharp and precise. When I finished, she looked up. He can't sell the house. Not legally. The trust is ironclad. Jerome made sure of that. So either he's forged documents, which is a felony, or he's bluffing to pressure you into signing. Which do you think it is? Doesn't matter. Either way, we're going to stop him. She pulled out her laptop. First, I'm checking if he's filed anything with the county. Any deed transfers, any sale agreements, anything. While she worked, I made coffee. The same way I'd made it for 45 years. In the Mr. Coffee maker Jerome bought in 1989, with Folgers and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Nothing filed, Dorothy said after 10 minutes. No pending sales, no transfers, no new deeds. Beatrice, I think he's bluffing. He's trying to scare you into cooperating. The movers, I said. He said they're coming Wednesday at 2. Then Wednesday at 2, I'll be here to send them away. She closed her laptop and looked at me directly. But Beatrice, I need you to understand something. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Terrence is desperate. Desperate people escalate. He might try to have you declared incompetent. He might claim you're not able to care for yourself. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my grandparents, who'd picked cotton for white landowners who treated them like animals. I thought about my parents, who'd cleaned houses and washed dishes so I could be the first person in our family to graduate college. I thought about Jerome, who'd fought for 40 years to make sure families like ours could build something and keep it. I'm prepared, I said. Dorothy smiled, a small, fierce smile. Good, because we're about to teach your son a lesson about underestimating black women. Wednesday, October 18th arrived with clear autumn skies and a chill that promised winter. I'd barely slept. All night, I'd lain in the bed I'd shared with Jerome for 33 years, staring at the ceiling and wondering if I was doing the right thing. He was my son, my only child. The baby I'd nursed through pneumonia when he was 3, the boy who'd cried in my arms when his father died. Didn't I owe him something? Didn't love mean sacrifice? But then I'd remember Jerome's voice. Tough love is still love, baby. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is let someone face their own consequences. At 1:45 p.m., Dorothy arrived. She'd brought her paralegal, a sharp-eyed young woman named Keisha Thompson, who immediately set up a camera on a tripod facing the front door. "Recording everything," Dorothy said. "Audio, video, witnesses. Whatever happens today, we'll have proof." At exactly 2 p.m., a white moving van turned onto Maple Street. The logo on the side read, "Reliable Movers and Storage," with a phone number underneath. 2 men climbed out, one white, maybe 50, with a beer belly straining against his company polo, the other younger, Latino, carrying a clipboard. They walked up my driveway. I watched from the window as Dorothy stepped onto the porch, Keisha's camera recording every second. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Dorothy said, her voice professional and cool. "I'm Dorothy Williams, legal counsel for Mrs. Beatrice Crane. May I see your work order?" The older man, who had supervisor embroidered on his shirt, handed over a paper. "We're here to move Mrs. Anderson." "Mrs. Crane," Dorothy corrected. "Right, sorry. Mrs. Crane. Her son Terrence hired us. Said she's moving to assisted living, needs everything packed by end of day." Dorothy examined the work order carefully. I could see her taking photos of it with her phone. Then she looked up, and her voice went cold. "Gentlemen, I need to inform you that Mr. Terrence Crane has no legal authority to hire you for this job. This property is held in the Crane Family Trust, with Mrs. Beatrice Crane as the sole trustee. She has not authorized this move, has not signed any agreement with your company, and has no intention of relocating." The supervisor's face went red. "But Mr. Crane said—" "Mr. Crane lied to you." Dorothy handed back the work order. "You've been hired under false pretenses. If you proceed with this move, you'll be participating in attempted theft. I'm an attorney, and I'm telling you this on camera." She gestured to Keisha. "I strongly suggest you contact Mr. Crane for payment and leave immediately." The younger man was already backing toward the truck. "Man, I told you this sounded weird." "We paid for gas to get out here," the supervisor protested. 2 hours of drive time. "Take it up with Mr. Crane," Dorothy said. "You're not moving anything from this address today." The supervisor swore under his breath, pulled out his phone, and jabbed at the screen. I couldn't hear what he said, but his face was furious. After 30 seconds, he hung up and looked at his colleague. "Let's go. Mr. Crane says he'll handle it." The truck pulled away at 2:14 p.m. I noted the time in the notebook Dorothy had told me to keep. Document everything she'd said. Every call, every interaction, every minute. At 2:23 p.m., Terrence's Audi screeched to a stop in front of my house. He wasn't alone this time. Ashley climbed out of the passenger side, her highlighted blonde hair perfect, her designer sunglasses, Gucci based on the gold logo, perched on top of her head. She wore skinny jeans, knee-high boots, and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly pension. They marched toward my porch like soldiers going to war. "What the hell is this?" Terrence shouted before he even reached the door. "Mom, who are these people? Why are you making this difficult?" I stepped out onto the porch, Dorothy beside me. Keisha kept filming. "Terrence," I said quietly, "this is Dorothy Williams. She's my attorney." "Your attorney?" Ashley's voice was shrill. "Beatrice, this is ridiculous. We're trying to help you. We're your family." "Family doesn't steal," I said. "Steal?" Terrence's face flushed dark. "I'm trying to help you transition to somewhere safe. This house is too much for you. The stairs, the yard, the maintenance. You're 64 years old, Mom. You could fall. You could—" "Mr. Crane," Dorothy interrupted, her voice cutting through his tirade like a knife. "Your mother is a competent, independent adult who manages her own affairs perfectly well. She does not need or want your help. More importantly, you have no legal right to sell this property." "I'm her son. I'm listed as beneficiary. Upon her death," Dorothy said. "Not before. This house is held in the Crane Family Trust, established November 12, 2017, by your late father, Jerome Crane. Your mother is the sole trustee with complete control over all trust assets. You are listed as beneficiary only upon Mrs. Crane's death. Would you like me to show you the trust documents?" I watched my son's face go from red to white in the space of 3 seconds. Dad said the house would be mine. "Eventually," Dorothy said. "Not now, and certainly not without your mother's consent." Ashley grabbed Terrence's arm, her manicured nails digging into his sleeve. Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper, but the porch was small, and I heard every word. "You said this was handled. You said she'd signed—" "I thought she had," Terrence hissed back. My stomach went cold. "You thought I had? Terrence, what have you done?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Nothing. I told the buyers that you'd agreed, that we were helping you move. I thought once you saw the facility, you'd understand it was for the best, and you'd sign the papers." "What buyers?" Dorothy's voice went sharp. "You found buyers? You negotiated a sale price? Without your mother's knowledge or consent?" "I was going to tell her," Terrence said, but his voice had gone weak. "When? After you'd already collected the check?" I felt something break inside my chest. "Terrence, this is fraud. You tried to defraud your own mother." "No, Mom, no, we needed help. Ashley and I were drowning. The vacation was supposed to be our anniversary, our big trip, and we already paid for it. All of it. And then work got complicated and I took some loans and—" He stopped, realizing he was saying too much. Ashley's face had gone cold and calculating. "Beatrice, if you loved your son, you'd want to help him. You'd want him to be happy. That house is worth at least $400,000. You're sitting on all that equity while your only child is struggling. What kind of mother does that?" The words hit me like a slap. What kind of mother? The kind whose parents had worked themselves to exhaustion so she could have a better life. The kind who'd taught for 33 years, saved every penny, sacrificed everything to give her son opportunities she'd never had. The kind who'd already paid for Terrence's college education, $47,000, and his wedding, $18,000, and the down payment on his first car, $12,000. What kind of mother? The kind who'd given everything, and it still wasn't enough. "The kind," I said quietly, "who knows the difference between helping and enabling. The kind who won't let her son steal from her." "We're not stealing." "Yes," Dorothy said, "you are, or you're trying to. And Mr. Crane, Mrs. Crane, I'm telling you both right now, on camera, to cease and desist. Do not contact Mrs. Crane about this house. Do not hire any more movers. Do not claim any authority over this property. If you do, we will pursue legal action for attempted fraud and elder abuse." "Elder abuse?" Ashley's voice went shrill. "We're trying to protect her. You're trying to steal her home to pay for your vacation," Dorothy said flatly. "That's textbook financial exploitation of an elderly person. Now leave, both of you. This conversation is over." Terrence stood there, and for just a moment I saw something in his face. Shame, maybe, or fear. But then Ashley tugged his arm, and the moment passed. "This isn't over, Mom," he said, his voice tight. "We'll prove you can't handle this house on your own. We'll show everyone that you need help, whether you want to admit it or not." They left. I watched the Audi peel away from the curb, and my legs went weak. I had to sit down on the porch steps. Dorothy sat beside me. "You did well." "He was going to sell my house without telling me," I said. "He found buyers. He negotiated. He was going to take the money and let me find out afterward." "I know. That's my son." "I know," Dorothy said again, softer this time. That evening, after Dorothy and Keisha left, I did something I hadn't done since Jerome died. I went to church on a Wednesday night. First Baptist Church of Oakdale had been my spiritual home for 42 years. The red brick building on the corner of Washington and Fifth, with its white steeple and stained glass windows showing black Jesus with arms outstretched. This was where Jerome and I had married in 1981, where we'd baptized Terrence in 1985, where I'd sat in the front pew at Jerome's funeral, holding Terrence's hand while Reverend Samuel Brooks preached about a man who'd fought for justice his whole life. Reverend Brooks was in his office when I knocked. He was 68, with a full head of silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up from his Bible and smiled. "Sister Beatrice, I wasn't expecting you tonight." "I need to talk to someone," I said. "Someone who knew Terrence when he was young." Reverend Brooks gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit, sister. Tell me what's on your heart. So I did. I told him everything, the attempted sale, the vacation, the confrontation. And when I finished, Reverend Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Sister Beatrice, he said finally, there's something you should know. Terrence came to see me about 3 months ago. July, maybe early August. He was troubled. About what? He didn't give me details, but he said he'd made some mistakes at work. Financial mistakes. He said he felt like he was drowning, like everything was closing in. He asked me to pray with him. Did he say how much he needed? Reverend Brooks hesitated. He mentioned a number, $200,000. The number hit me like cold water. 200,000. Not just the vacation. Not just some credit card debt. $200,000. He's in real trouble, I said. Yes. And sister, I'll be honest with you. When someone needs that kind of money and they're willing to sell their mother's house to get it, Reverend Brooks leaned forward. That's not just debt. That's desperation. Maybe it's more than debt. What do you mean? I mean, I've counseled a lot of people in financial trouble over the years. Gambling debts, business failures, medical bills, but 200,000? For a man with a good job, a working wife? Sister, that sounds like he's trying to cover something up. My hands went cold. You think he stole money? I think you need to be very careful, and I think you're doing the right thing by protecting yourself. I left the church as evening services were starting. I could hear the choir warming up. Amazing Grace, the old hymn my grandmother used to sing while she worked in white people's kitchens. I'd always loved that song. The promise of redemption, of being found after being lost. But right now, I wasn't sure Terrence wanted to be found. Thursday morning, I called my book club president, Gladys Porter. Gladys was 73, white, a retired librarian who'd lived in Oakdale her entire life. We'd been friends for 12 years, ever since I'd joined the Maple Street Literary Society. Beatrice, she said when she answered, I've been thinking about you. How are you holding up? I need to talk, I said. Can I come over? 30 minutes later, I was sitting in Gladys's sunny kitchen, drinking tea from china cups her mother had left her, and telling her everything. When I finished, Gladys was quiet. Then she said, Can I tell you something I've never told anyone in the book club? Of course. 10 years ago, my daughter Christine, you've met her, came to me with a business opportunity. She needed seed money for a boutique. $50,000. I gave it to her. And 6 months later, she needed more. Just temporary, Mom, just to cover inventory. Another $30,000. Then another 20. Then she said the boutique was failing, and if I didn't help her one more time, she'd lose everything. So I signed over my house to her, to use as collateral for a business loan. I felt my stomach drop. Gladys, within a year, Christine had taken out a home equity loan against my house. $200,000. The boutique had never existed. She'd gambled it all away. Online poker. Gladys's voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking around her teacup. By the time I found out, she'd lost everything. The bank foreclosed. I lost my house, the house I'd lived in for 47 years, the house where I'd raised my children. What did you do? I moved into a rental apartment. Christine went to Gamblers Anonymous. We don't speak anymore. She sends Christmas cards. I don't open them. Gladys looked at me directly. Beatrice, I'm telling you this because I want you to understand. You are doing the right thing, even if it hurts, even if people judge you, even if Terrence never forgives you. You are saving yourself. And sometimes that's all we can do. I cried then, sitting in Gladys's kitchen, and she held my hand across the table. Do you regret it? I asked. Standing up for yourself? Every day, Gladys said, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. That afternoon, I went through my filing cabinet. Jerome had always been meticulous about records. Every document organized, every receipt saved, everything labeled and dated. In the folder marked Terrence Financial, I found something I'd forgotten about. I was still listed as a co-signer on Terrence's first credit card from college. He'd opened it when he was 19, Capital One, $500 limit, and he'd never closed it. I'd co-signed so he could build credit, which meant I had legal access to the statements. I called Capital One and requested copies of the last 12 months of statements. They arrived by email within an hour. What I found made my blood run cold. The credit limit had increased over the years. Now it was $35,000, and it was maxed out. But it wasn't the amount that terrified me. It was what the charges were for. March 15th, 2023. Prestige Resort International, Maldives, $52,000. April 3rd, 2023. Cartier, $7,850. May 12th, 2023. Louis Vuitton, $4,200. June 8th, 2023. Restoration Hardware, $12,400. July 22nd, 2023. BMW Financial Services, down payment, $15,000. August 5th, 2023. American Express, balance transfer, $23,000. September 1st, 2023. Personal loan payment, $8,500. September 28th, 2023. Cash advance, $10,000. And dozens more. Page after page of charges for things they couldn't afford, bought with money they didn't have. But there was something else. Something that made my hands shake as I held the papers. On August 10th, 2023, there was a charge for Henshaw Geriatric Services, consultation fee, $500. They'd already hired a doctor. Before they'd even confronted me about the house, they'd been planning to have me declared incompetent. This wasn't desperation. This was premeditation. I called Dorothy immediately. "I need you to see this," I said. "All of it." Friday, October 20th, I woke up to 15 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from Terrence. The texts started calm. "Mom, we need to talk. Please call me." By 3 a.m., they'd escalated. "You're making a huge mistake. I'm your son. How can you do this to me?" By 6 a.m., "Fine. If you won't help me voluntarily, I'll do what I have to do." I forwarded everything to Dorothy, then made coffee and waited. At 9:47 a.m., a process server arrived at my door with legal documents. Terrence had filed for emergency guardianship in Middlesex County Probate Court, claiming I was mentally incompetent and unable to manage my own affairs. The hearing was scheduled for Monday, October 30th, 10 days away. Dorothy arrived within an hour of my call, carrying a briefcase and wearing what I'd come to think of as her war face. "Let me see it," she said. I handed her the petition. She read it standing in my living room, her jaw getting tighter with each page. "This is garbage," she said finally. "Listen to this. Respondent shows signs of cognitive decline, including paranoid delusions about family members, inability to maintain basic household functions, and refusal of appropriate medical care. He's claiming you're paranoid because you won't let him steal your house. Can he win? Not if we prepare properly. We need documentation of everything. Medical records, financial records, character witnesses. Beatrice, by the time we walk into that courtroom, we're going to prove you're more competent than most people half your age." Over the next week, Dorothy assembled what she called our arsenal. On Monday, I went to Dr. Patricia Chen, my primary care physician for 15 years. She conducted a full cognitive assessment, memory tests, reasoning tests, problem-solving exercises. I scored 30 out of 30 on the mini mental state examination. "Beatrice," Dr. Chen said, reviewing the results, "your cognitive function is excellent, better than most 64-year-olds I see. I'll testify to that in court if needed." On Tuesday, Dorothy brought in a forensic accountant named James Washington, a certified fraud examiner who'd worked with Jerome on several cases. He spent 6 hours reviewing my financial records. "Mrs. Crane," James said, spreading documents across my dining room table, "your finances are impeccable. Every bill paid on time for the last 5 years. Retirement accounts properly managed. No signs of confusion, missed payments, or exploitation, except by your son. Your monthly budget shows you're living well within your means on a pension of $3,847 per month. You even have an emergency fund of $47,000. You're doing better than 90% of retirees I see." On Wednesday, Dorothy contacted the Middlesex County Clerk's office with a specific request: any recent documents filed involving 247 Maple Street. What they found made my blood run cold. On September 15th, 2023, a full month before Terrence had confronted me, he'd filed a deed transfer claiming I'd signed the property over to him. The signature on the document was supposed to be mine, but I'd never signed anything. Dorothy brought a notary to my house that afternoon. We created certified exemplars of my signature, 20 different versions, all witnessed and dated. Then Dorothy sent them to a handwriting expert. The report came back Thursday morning. The signature on the September 15th deed transfer shows multiple indicators of forgery, including unnatural pen lifts, tremor in lines suggesting traced copying, and inconsistent pressure patterns. In my professional opinion, this signature was not made by Beatrice Crane. Terrence hadn't just tried to sell my house. He'd committed deed fraud, a felony. "Dorothy," I said, staring at the report, "he's going to prison." "Maybe, probably, if we report this." Dorothy looked at me carefully. "Beatrice, I need you to understand what we're deciding here. If we present this evidence in court, the judge will refer it to the district attorney. Terrence will be criminally charged. He could face up to 5 years in prison for deed fraud. My son, my baby, 5 years in prison. What if we don't report it? Then he'll keep trying. Maybe not with you, but with someone else. Someone more vulnerable. Someone who doesn't have a dead husband who was smart enough to set up a trust." Dorothy's voice was gentle but firm. "This is who he is now, and you didn't make him this way." I thought about my grandmother, picking cotton in Mississippi. My parents, cleaning houses so I could go to college. Jerome, fighting for 40 years to protect families like ours. "Present the evidence," I said. "All of it." The guardianship hearing took place on Monday, October 30th, in Courtroom 4B of the Middlesex County Probate Court. Judge Lorraine Mitchell presided, a black woman in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. I'd met her once before at a fundraiser for Jerome's legal aid clinic. She'd called him one of the good ones, and meant it. Terrence sat at the petitioner's table with his attorney, a young man named David Kirkland, who looked fresh out of law school and deeply uncomfortable. Ashley sat in the gallery behind him, dressed conservatively for once. Navy dress, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. Playing the concerned daughter-in-law. They'd brought witnesses. Dr. Patricia Henshaw, the geriatric specialist they'd consulted in August. Ashley's mother, Linda Sanderson, who I'd met exactly 3 times. And someone from Terrence's office, a colleague named Jennifer Brooks who barely knew me. Dorothy sat beside me at the respondent's table, radiating controlled fury. Behind us in the gallery, Gladys Porter, Reverend Samuel Brooks, Dr. Patricia Chen, and 15 members of my book club, all dressed in their Sunday best. Judge Mitchell called the court to order at 9 a.m. "This is a petition for emergency guardianship," she said. "Mr. Kirkland, present your case." Kirkland stood, fumbling slightly with his notes. "Your Honor, Mr. Terrence Crane seeks guardianship of his mother, Beatrice Crane, age 64, due to concerns about her cognitive decline and inability to safely maintain her current living situation." He called Dr. Henshaw first. She took the stand, professional and composed. "I conducted a brief assessment of Mrs. Crane on August 10th of this year. During that 20-minute observation, I noted several concerning signs. Mrs. Crane displayed paranoid thinking, specifically accusing her son of attempting to steal her property. She seemed isolated, living alone in a house too large for her needs. She was defensive when offered help and resistant to discussing assisted living options. These are all classic signs of cognitive decline in elderly patients." Dorothy's cross-examination was surgical. "Dr. Henshaw, you said you conducted a brief assessment. How brief?" "Approximately 20 minutes. "And where did this assessment take place?" "In Mrs. Crane's garden." "Not in a clinical setting, not with formal testing. Just a 20-minute conversation in her garden?" "Sometimes that's sufficient to observe. Did you know that Mr. Crane, who paid you $500 for this consultation, was at that time attempting to sell his mother's house without her knowledge or consent?" Dr. Henshaw hesitated. "No." "Did you know that he had already hired moving companies to evict her?" "No." "So when Mrs. Crane expressed concern that her son was trying to steal her property, that wasn't paranoid delusion. That was accurate observation of actual events, wasn't it?" I suppose in retrospect, no further questions." Kirkland called Ashley's mother next. Linda Sanderson testified that I seemed confused and not myself during recent family gatherings, that I'd lost weight, that I'd forgotten Ashley's birthday in July. Dorothy didn't even stand for cross-examination. "Mrs. Crane, how much does Mrs. Crane weigh?" Maybe 140? She weighs 153 pounds, same as she has for 5 years per her medical records. And Mrs. Crane, when is Ashley's birthday?" "July 14th. Mrs. Crane's calendar shows she sent Ashley a birthday card on July 12th, 2 days early. Does that sound like someone who forgot? Linda's face went red. Well, maybe I was mistaken. Clearly. Then Kirkland called Terrence. My son took the stand wearing a suit I'd never seen before. Probably new, probably expensive, probably bought with money he didn't have. He looked thin, tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. Mr. Crane, Kirkland said, please describe your concerns about your mother. She's living alone in a 3-bedroom house, Terrence said. She's 64 years old. The stairs are dangerous. She could fall. The yard is too much for her to maintain. She's isolated. She refuses to discuss moving somewhere safer. And recently, she's become paranoid, hostile. She's accused me of trying to steal from her. She's hired lawyers to fight me. She's turned my own family against me. His voice cracked on the last words. For just a moment, I saw the little boy he'd been. The child who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. The teenager who'd cried when his goldfish died. Then I remembered the forged signature, the deed transfer, the premeditated plan to declare me incompetent. Mr. Crane, Kirkland continued, have you tried to sell your mother's house? I made some inquiries, just to see what options were available, to help her understand what she could afford for assisted living, but I never actually sold anything without her consent. It was a lie, but a careful one. Technically, he hadn't completed a sale, not because he didn't try, but because the trust had prevented it. And why do you believe your mother needs a guardian? Because she can't see that she needs help. She's stubborn. She thinks she can do everything herself, but she can't, and I'm terrified that something will happen to her, and I'll be too late. He was good. I had to give him that. He sounded sincere, concerned, loving. Then Dorothy stood for cross-examination, and everything changed. Mr. Crane, you testified that you made inquiries about selling your mother's house. Is that correct? Yes. When did you make these inquiries? I don't remember exactly. A few weeks ago. Dorothy pulled out a document. Let me refresh your memory. On September 15th, 2023, you filed a deed transfer with the Middlesex County Clerk's Office. This document purports to transfer ownership of 247 Maple Street from the Crane Family Trust to you personally. It includes a signature claiming to be your mother's. Did you file this document? Terrence's face went white. That's not... Yes or no, Mr. Crane? Did you file this deed transfer? My attorney said, Your attorney is not testifying, you are. Did you file this document? Yes, he whispered. Dorothy approached the bench and handed Judge Mitchell 3 documents. Your Honor, I'm presenting as evidence. 1. The filed deed transfer dated September 15th, 2023. 2. Certified exemplars of Mrs. Crane's actual signature. And 3. A forensic handwriting analysis concluding that the signature on the deed transfer is a forgery. The courtroom went completely silent. Judge Mitchell examined the documents for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked at Terrence. Mr. Crane, did you forge your mother's signature on this deed? I was desperate. I needed... Answer the question. Did you forge your mother's signature? Yes. His voice broke. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ashley gasped behind him. I heard her say, You told me she'd agreed. You said she signed. But that's not all, is it, Mr. Crane? Dorothy's voice cut through the chaos. Your Honor, we've also discovered that Mr. Crane is currently under investigation by the Minnesota Securities Division for misappropriation of client funds while employed as a financial advisor at Prestige Financial Advisors in Boston. She presented another document, a letter from the Securities Division dated October 25th, 2023, 5 days ago. The investigation alleges that Mr. Crane took unauthorized loans from client accounts totaling approximately $187,000 between March and August of this year. He's been using those funds to maintain a lifestyle he couldn't afford and to cover gambling debts. Gambling debts? I heard myself say. Terrence, you gambled? He wouldn't look at me. His head was down, his shoulders shaking. Dorothy continued mercilessly. Mr. Crane needed money to replace the stolen client funds before the audit discovered them. He'd already spent $52,000 on a vacation. He'd maxed out multiple credit cards. He'd taken a $60,000 loan against his 401k. And when none of that was enough, He decided to steal his mother's house, the house his father specifically protected with a trust to prevent exactly this kind of exploitation. Judge Mitchell's face was thunderous. Mr. Kirkland, did you know any of this when you filed this petition? No, Your Honor. My client assured me. Your client lied to you, just like he lied to his mother, to this court, and apparently to his employer and his clients. Judge Mitchell turned to Terrence. Mr. Crane, stand up. Terrence stood, swaying slightly. I'm denying this petition for guardianship. Mrs. Crane is clearly competent. This petition was filed in bad faith as part of a scheme to access her assets. I'm ordering you to pay her legal fees, which I'm estimating at approximately $15,000. Your Honor, I don't have... Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. You are not to contact your mother or come within 500 feet of her property. And finally, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Deed fraud is a felony in Minnesota, Mr. Crane. You're looking at up to 5 years in prison. Ashley stood up in the gallery. This is insane. He's her son. She's destroying him over a house. Judge Mitchell's eyes went cold. Mrs. Crane, sit down or I'll have you removed. Your husband committed multiple crimes. He forged documents. He stole from clients. He tried to defraud his own mother. She didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself. She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. I walked out of that courthouse into October sunshine feeling like I could finally breathe. Dorothy put her arm around my shoulders. You did it, she said. We did it, I corrected. Behind me I heard Terrence's voice. Mom, please. I turned. He was standing on the courthouse steps, Ashley nowhere in sight. She'd apparently left the moment the judge adjourned. Terrence looked broken, small, lost. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant. I was desperate. I made terrible choices. But I'm your son. Please. Don't let them send me to prison. Please. Every instinct I had screamed at me to go to him, to hold him, to fix this. But I'd been fixing his mistakes his whole life, covering for him when he skipped school, paying off his credit cards in college, co-signing loans he couldn't afford, enabling him to become the man who stood in front of me now, begging me to save him from consequences he'd earned. Terrence, I said quietly, I love you. I will always love you. But I can't save you from yourself. Not anymore. So you're just going to let them lock me up? Your own son? I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices. That's what parents who truly love their children do. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard him crying. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. 6 months later, I stood in my garden on a bright April morning, planting the first roses of spring. Terrence had taken a plea deal. 2 years probation, full restitution to the clients he'd stolen from, community service, and mandatory financial counseling. No prison time, but his financial advisor license was permanently revoked. He was working at a call center now, making $17 an hour. Ashley had filed for divorce 3 weeks after the hearing. He'd written me letters. 6 of them, over the months. I'd read every one. The first few were angry, blaming me for everything. But the last one, which arrived in March, was different. Mom, I'm in therapy now. Court mandated it first, but I'm staying with it because it's helping me see things clearly for the first time in years. I was wrong. About everything. I let greed and pride and fear turn me into someone I don't recognize. Someone who hurt the person who loved him most. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm working on being better. Being the son Dad raised. The son you deserved. I hope someday I can make you proud again. I love you, Terrence. I hadn't responded yet. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something. But right now, I was learning to be content with uncertainty. My book club had started meeting twice a month. I was volunteering at the library 4 days a week instead of 2, teaching financial literacy classes for seniors, helping them protect themselves from exactly what Terrence had tried to do to me. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a retired teacher named Walter James who made me laugh and never once asked about my property. The house stood strong around me. The house my grandparents had dreamed of when they picked cotton in Mississippi. The house my parents had worked 3 jobs to help me achieve. The house Jerome had protected with his last act of love. I was 64 years old. I'd lost my husband. I'd lost my son, at least for now. But I hadn't lost myself, and in the end, that was what mattered. I knelt in the dirt, planting freedom roses in soil that was finally, truly mine. The morning sun was warm on my shoulders. Birds sang in the maple tree Jerome had planted when Terence was born. My neighbors waved as they walked their dogs past my house. My house, standing proud and strong on Maple Street. I was Beatrice Crane, daughter of the Great Migration, granddaughter of sharecroppers, teacher, widow, fighter, and I was home.